Welcome back, everyone, to Merge Conflict, your weekly developer podcast. I'm one of your hosts in the United States of America. United States of America. It's a place where I live. It's in the Pacific Northwest. I'm James Montemagno. With me,
As always, is
uh,
Frank Kruger, who does not live in Japan, but is still reporting from Japan because totally forgot when his flight was. So I'm still here. Eventually I'll find the internet and look it up and find my way back to the Pacific Northwest myself. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
I'm good. Apparently, I'm really tired. I did just go on a big bike ride, but I swear I'm awake, which is funny because I thought I was going to call you today, and I thought you were going to be exhausted because I thought you had just landed like Pacific
Hmm.
Northwest like last night or this
Right.
morning. But no, you're still hanging out in Japan, so that's pretty cool.
Bright-eyed, getting all my steps in, 15 to 20,000 steps a day. I'm feeling healthy, drinking 6 cups of coffee and tea a day. This country keeps you going.
I like that. Well, I will say since you've been gone, there's just been more agent stuff, more MCP stuff, more all the things. We talked the last few weeks about them. Google announced something called A to A or Agent to Agent, and then there's also MCP. A lot of people seem to be confused, Frank. But let me
Mm.
just give you a TLDR.
Okay. This is new to me. I don't know anything. Agent to agent, James, that sounds, if I may, expensive. If I'm paying for two robots to just talk to each other, but I'm willing to spend the money if you convince me that I need some A to A.
A to A. Yes. So we talked about MCPs, and MCPs are like basically an API to create tools that LLMs talk into, right? Like in general, you
Mhm.
know, you have MCP clients and like they're communicating there, right? These
It's to
MCP
it's to get
hosts.
external information. We're training these things to be huge. They're very intelligent, but they can't possibly have every detail of every bit of knowledge in the world. That's impossible. So we have tools and MCPs to give them all that data.
Yes.
Easy concept.
Easy concept. And the agent, if you will, which would be like Copilot or Claude, for example, can call these, MCP servers. They are the MCP client. They're calling in. They're talking to databases, talking to other APIs. Basically, you got an API, you can expose it to your agent client thingy. Now, agent to agent,
Mm,
it's in the
mm,
name.
and
It's
sus.
your agent talking to other agents. Okay, so for example, it for example, it's an API for agents to talk to other agents. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Going down
the
the
whole
rabbit hole.
so for example, and if I look at some of the diagrams and here, is imagine you had like multiple MCP like hosts basically. Like you had Claude Desktop and you had GitHub Copilot inside of VS Code. Well, A2A would be a protocol that lets AI agents collaborate across ecosystems regardless of their framework or their vendor. So like the whole thing is that like you have these AI agents all over the place and then they could communicate across basically. That's the
Boy, boy. I mean, okay. I, I like the agent programming. I was actually defending agent programming to someone. They're like, is this hype? What is this?" Like, it is honestly hype. It's a lot of hype. But is there anything useful there? And I think the argument I made on the last podcast is I think there is value in it. We're raising the abstraction level. And I think that that's good because you don't burden yourself with all the nitty gritty details. So I'm always in favor of getting rid of that kind of stuff. But at the same time, even within the agent frameworks, I don't feel like people are taking full advantage of the power of agent frameworks right now. I see if you go on YouTube and learn about agents, a lot of what I call straight line linear agents do this, then this, then this, then this, then this. And programming, it's your like first basic program before you learn how to run functions, before you learn how to run loops, before you really understand if statements. It's basically the first kind of basic programs I wrote. And I feel like people still aren't taking advantage of all the power available within this higher level agent programming. And now, James, you're throwing meta programming at me. That's what agent to agent is. Now we're having one library talk to another. I'm not sure the vibe coding community is ready for it. I think maybe professional developers who are accustomed to having multiple services talk to each other, this makes a little bit more sense for software developers. Um, Otherwise, I feel like we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves at the moment. But here's the critical question. James, can I make flight reservations and order a pizza with it? Because those are the only two demos agents ever seem to do. Can I do that with two agents? I can do it with one, but can I do it with two?
It's a good question. I'm sure that probably one of the agents could order a pizza and then the other one could like send you a email receipt validation for it, and then one other agent would then track it in real time. Um, yeah, I mean, I think that this one's fascinating because some of the ideas like, hey, you might have like a client agent on your machine, and then you might have remote agents that are executing work and doing stuff for you, right? So here's a good example: is imagine you had like a GitHub agent. Like this is an agent that is on GitHub, right? It's doing stuff. Right now, if you have the GitHub MCP server, well, it's just making like calls back and forth. So you have one client, one agent. It's figuring out how to make these calls, how to get the data, how to do all this stuff. You could have like this isn't a thing, but you could have like a GitHub agent, and the GitHub agent is actually the thing that is responsible for executing all of the commands and all of this stuff and processing things. And then that agent, for example, could be like doing pull request reviews, for example, and doing other stuff, right? It could be like a whole series of things inside of it. Or another example is like, there's like GitHub, code reviews or whatever already. That does exist. Those are
Mhm.
agents. And imagine if your GitHub Copilot, again, this isn't a thing that exists, but those two agents can communicate together. So you could be working on code and then like GitHub Copilot, like, hey, like this other agent that was like reviewing the PR, like it also gave me this. Do you want to, like, imagine like that ecosystem? That's just me. I just made that
Okay.
up. This is a hypothetical scenario, but like how the agent to agent things work is like, it's like supposed to be like secure collaboration, task and state management. It has like, capability discovery, and it's kind of like secure by default basically, and has support for long running tasks. So I think that's the idea there. I saw this demo at Visual Studio Live in Vegas that was fascinating from the SQL Server team, and it was all agent based. So they said, imagine you have a client. Imagine you work at a insurance company. And I said, wow, I don't know how I got
Mm.
myself here working at an
Yeah.
insurance company, but I've made one or two wrong decisions in life. No, just kidding. I thank you, all
We
insurance
love you
people.
all.
Yeah. I don't know how I got there, like how I somehow wrote printer software for a while. But
You need a strong imagination, James. Really stretch your imagination.
they're like, imagine you're creating an agent, like your agent is going to help your team do deep research on clients, right? So you may, for example, create a bunch of little agents that can do a bunch of work. So for example, you might have an agent that can do like user directory agent. This user directory agent can like sort through and filter out data and do smart things about data, update rows, do a bunch of stuff. You have another one that's like a claims agent. You have another one that's like a chat history agent that's like, for your CRM. And then you have another one that's like, okay, I can actually issue stuff. So you can say, imagine Frank, I'm your insurance agent, Frank. Ugh, sorry, bro. And you're like, oh man, like this
You
flight's
don't know what life
delayed.
decisions I made
I mean,
now.
yeah,
I didn't talk
you're
about
like,
your life decisions. What about mine?
you're like, hey, James, like my premiums are way too high. I'm gonna need you to deal with it. And that's it. Sorry, bro. Welcome to 2025. But I'm like, okay, I got this email from Frank Kruger. I don't know. So I would go into my agent and I'm like, hey, this Frank dude emailed me. And then like the agents would go to work. Like, can you go find information? So the agents are then going out and like, okay, I'm going to query for my user data. And then I'm going to ask this other agent about like, hey, I've gotten this information. Let me ask this other agent about, the claims data. And then let me go ask this. And then, kind of can the higher up agent can then take all that information and distill it down. Right. So that's what I would think like agents to agent. My assumption is right now that agents are being created in more closed ecosystems. And you would then, and I think it's what MCPs are, by the way, is like the whole idea of MCPs is like instead of creating integrations for 20 different clients or IDEs, you create this thing that does this thing, right? So my assumption is if we want to evolve and grow quickly, things like this agent to agent thing or MCP they will basically say, hey, let's create a standard that everyone gets behind, right? And we all go in together for. Now, that being said, like, I would say MCP is fascinating because from Anthropic, right? And obviously this is from Google. So then, they're a bigger player. So it's like their standard. And that's always a little bit, funky, perhaps. So we'll see.
I don't worry too much about that. All standards usually start out proprietary or something like that. I mean, that's just the typical life cycle of software. Um, the thing that concerns me the most, uh, Google just kind of caught up with everyone with Gemini 2.5.
Yeah.
If you notice in like the more wild west communities, everyone's getting very rigorous. Sorry, this is a little bit of a side tangent, but everyone's getting very rigorous with model versions and all of that. Like, you build an agent around a model, let's say a Claude or a Gemini or an OpenAI thing, and then they release version 3.5.1, and then none of your stuff works anymore. So I think people are really becoming more sensitive to that kind of thing. So, like, let's say I spend a year perfecting the perfect agent to order pizza,
Yeah.
and it works perfectly on Claude Sonnet 3.5. And then whatever 3.7 comes out, and all of a sudden it just keeps ordering anchovies. I don't know. It's
Oh,
just the worst agent on the planet. Don't order
classic.
anchovies or pineapple. Um so you can totally see how you actually might actually in a long term get to a place where you do want multiple agents, because I have perfected the pizza agent. It runs on this version of the model, and let us never touch that again, because AIs are mysterious black boxes, and once it's working, never touch it again. Whereas if you develop a new agent, maybe you do want to use the new hotness, Gemini 2.5 or something like that. And in that case, actually a lot of the agents frameworks support multi-model and all that, but I can actually very easily see, especially in an enterprise environment, where you want to keep those two separate. You don't want to touch that one because it works, and we don't ever want to touch it again. And then we have this other one over here that's just using the new hotness and all that. I find it actually really fascinating. I was always concerned about this, the model versions thing, because every time they train a new model, it's going to break everything you've ever written. The chances of two models ever giving the same results is basically nil. Um, so I'm going to restate. I still feel like we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but I can imagine scenarios where this pays off. I think you said the two magic keywords, the classic computer science hobgoblins, service discoverability. Good luck with that. Bonjour's been trying to do it for several years, and I don't think we've ever figured out service discoverability. I mean, take away the AI part, what you're really talking about is still just APIs, a service talking to a service, talking to a service, talking to a service. We don't have discovery for those APIs right now. We just don't. People have tried to create registrars and galleries of APIs, and you can have a registry of Swagger files. Is that discoverability? Do you just want to be randomly pulling out an API and calling into it? And from a financial model, that makes absolutely no sense, because all APIs, everyone is SaaS these days. Are you software as a service? You got to be software as a service. You got to be charging for your API access. It's fine. If it only left pads, you got to be charging for that left pad. And so the agent discovery thing, that sounds like a cute little thing that you put on a slide, because in the real world you still engineer these things. You still say, I'm going to use this API, I'm going to use it at this version level, I'm going to use it at this price point, because now that stuff matters. So there's that. But then you also said the other magic word, especially in AI, which is state management. That's always the hard one. Who's passing around data? Is the data persistent? Is it user centric? All that stuff, honestly, again, that we still struggle with as developers. And they're pitching this as a solution too. So I don't. Google's a lot of smart people. I have faith in them, but at the same time, they are tackling pretty fundamental computer science problems here, and on top of that, engineering and financial problems. So I'm still a little bit sus, but I can still imagine the scenarios where you do want multiple agents.
Yeah. And I'm really interested to see. how things evolve over the next year or two as well. Like things are moving, pretty quick, but I do think
Mhm.
that there's like sort of how it integrates into the rest of the clients or desktop apps, right? Maybe Copilot app, your email client or your IDE or whatever, because those things also need to adopt these things as well, and the discoverability of it. Because in a world, here's my thinking too. In a world of, sure, things can discover APIs, but you also just hit the other problem, like you said, is yeah, like open API and Swagger files, like they're out there, right? And like I can grab one, just like I can grab a configuration for an MCP. The difference is like, where's the gallery? Where's the reviews? Where's the like certification process, right? That I want to
Absolutely.
grab the app store, right? The app store of agents or MCP servers, and I'm sure it's coming, right? I'm sure that there's things that are happening, but I've been thinking about that recently because I think like the NuGet package gallery, right? It's like here's all this stuff,
Mhm.
but you still got to kind of search for what you're installing compared to like extensions or like just installing stuff from the app store. Like how do you get those things and how do you kind of go deeper on them? But I've been thinking about that next problem, which is the configuration and the adoption and the discoverability is like kind of the next issue of like, okay, I want to do this thing. Okay, how do I find that thing that's gonna like help me do it, for example? Like a good example would be this is I'm not even sure, but I'm imagining like my software development that a bunch of little agents could like run on my code or like process like images and resize them and do a bunch of stuff that previously a bunch of post processor scripts or something like that had to
Sure.
run. Scripts and a bunch of other things had to run, just can do it better. And it could be like, okay, I'm going to do code quality or do code reviews. There's things like working in the background and doing a bunch of things. So instead of having like one big agent that's doing stuff, you might have like specialized agents. I think actually that's what you're kind of talking about too, is like the specialized agent. Like imagining a GitHub Copilot code review agent, like that's all it's doing is it's like really fine tune on this thing, or it's like I'm really fine tune on some other asynchronous, the asynchronous agent, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to help you do the right or performance agents. All it does is like
Yeah.
super trained on that. Like that would be kind of fascinating.
Yeah, and we're seeing that right now, especially the programming language communities who aren't getting all the love they could get. A lot of these models are just trained on all the source code out there, so it has all the biases in that source code. The more popular languages are better represented in that training set. So I think it was the OCaml community. They just fine-tuned their own model. They're like, "Hey, you guys have not been including enough OCaml code in these things. These are." And I experienced this because I'm an F sharp programmer, and F sharp and OCaml are very similar languages. And you'll just notice the AI is making a lot more mistakes in F sharp and OCaml than in, say, Python. And so these communities are fine tuning, and that's so smart. It's so smart. What a way for a community to get together, like publish all your code, fine tune a bunch of models on it. I've really been wanting to pitch this to the F sharp community because there's actually great resources out there. We should get some F sharp tuned things. But that's where like the language gets a little bit weird because I keep saying model because for me, it's all nice, simple, like there's a thing, you input data to it and it spits out new data. That to me is the model. For me, agent is multiple models working together. Multiple agents, I'm still trying to wrap my head around. But I do believe that, yeah, the future is still in specialization. I mean, just from an energy standpoint, to get one model that knows OCaml as well as it knows surgical operations on the inner ear, that's
Yeah.
asking a lot out of a text-based network. So, definitely in the future, we are definitely gonna be fine-tuning these puppies and using them for specific areas, which is its own problem. Sorry, side tangent number 2. Have you seen the release of Llama 4 and the feedback Facebook is receiving on it?
I've seen a
It's
little. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been on vacation, so I haven't been able to catch all of it, but it's kinda funny because, it's killing it at all the benchmarks and all those kinds of things, but when people go to use it, well, doesn't work the way the old one used to, and it gives different results. And Facebook says, well, maybe that's your client doing that. And so, like, we're getting into this weird area where I think, God, we've only been into this for a couple of years now, and we're already starting to plateau a little bit on the general purpose models. And then I think our next big hurdle is we just need better benchmarks, because I think that we're proving that SATs are easy. United States standardized tests are easy to pass. The bar exams, easy to pass for these things, but those are not actually representative of people's real work and the real things that we want out of these. I was watching one YouTuber, they wanted to reflow a PDF document. So you have a PDF, you want to change some text in it. Programmers who have never dealt with PDF, they say, oh, that sounds easy. I'll get a PDF reading library, I'll change a paragraph, and I'll spit a new paragraph out. But the truth is, a PDF file is not a document. It is a set of drawing commands, and it says where to put every single letter physically on that piece of paper. And if you want to change the text of a PDF document, you basically have to implement all of Microsoft Word. You have to backwards, you have to feed in all those drawing commands, figure out what the document structure is. Then you have to apply the change, and then you have to implement all of Microsoft Word's typesetting in order to generate all that stuff out. That is a ridiculously hard problem that I'm not even sure any of the big general purpose AIs can solve. But I'm sure, pretty confident that a fine-tuned one could actually handle, because it's not the hardest problem in the world, but it's hard enough that a general purpose one just can't do it.
Yeah, I think that when you say model and agents, like, they're not one and the same, but they can be together, right? You might have a PDF agent that's like doing stuff and it has a fine-tuned PDF model that's doing stuff, right?
Mhm.
I can kind of see that. And I do believe that in this world, um, that especially for software development, it will become even more important. I mean, one of the reasons, I prefer like Claude 3.5, for example. I'd use 3.7, but the rate limiting right now is a little bit much. So, I use 3.5. I haven't tried some of the new, like, Gemini models, but why I like 3.5 over like GPT 4.0 for the actual development, like for 4.0, if I want to ask it, there's like ask, edit, and agent, right? So if I'm in ask mode, I'm kind of like in this nice little beautiful sandbox where I can just like
Mhm.
interact with the agent in Copilot and like be like, hey, I don't know anything about asynchronous programming. I don't know anything about this code base. I don't know anything about F sharp. I don't know anything about Frank Krueger. I don't, what's this? I can ask, I'm in a safe space, right? Like I can kind of like go back and forth. It's not like modifying my code, not doing anything.
Yeah.
But when I'm in edit and agent mode, it's generating code, whether recommending or implementing it and doing checking on it. And of course, it's like looking at your code and your custom instructions, you're giving it best practices. But any of these models are only up to date with the world at certain points in time. Of course, they're doing revs of them and things like that. But, if you're using, let's say, I was doing like Mud Blazor, which is like a material design library for Blazor applications. And it was really good. It got really close and it,
Mhm.
it did. Like it worked at the end of the day, but a few things didn't work because between the version that it knew about the code and the, and the changes that they made in the last 2 weeks, well, how are they supposed to know that though they change how you initialize this thing? It's almost impossible. I have seen like Burke did a video in VS Code where he used this fetch command, and this was actually really cool. So you can kind of think of it as a tool. I think it's just built into VS Code, but you can basically say, "Hey, implement this, initialize this thing, and then but based on pound fetch, here's the URL," and it would look and
Mhm.
parse the website data. So if you had like, oh, I'm going to initialize SQLite-net, if you had an amazing README, for example, I could say, oh, read this README. It's going to walk you through step one, step two, whatever the initialization. It could have that additional context. So it's kind of bringing that in.
Mhm.
But for imagining, like, it would be really neat if we had a bunch of little tiny agents for like a SQL Server agent, and then like, you know, I don't know, JSON agent, all these other little things that can
Mhm.
like are really fine tuned that are doing really good things for those specific items. that are always kept up to date, like in near real time. So imagine like retraining your agent on all the latest, like every time you make a change to your SQLite-net, imagine you could give it the context of all of the things over and over again. And that would enable, for example, there's two things, right? Is that GitHub Copilot could call your SQLite-net agent that could like do a bunch of stuff and help a bunch of stuff, put a bunch of stuff out, and could do a bunch of stuff. It's an agent. It could do stuff, call an LLM. But then also, like you could have an MCP server that like knows how to like actually, like if I gave it a SQLite-net or a SQLite database, it could query it, for example. Like I could point it at a file and then I could say, go read me the data audit. Like those are the two different things. Like the MCP server is a tool that basically doesn't need to reason. It is just doing a thing. It is like, go make this API call, go execute this SQL command and go do it, right? Whereas the agent is reasoning, it's doing stuff, it's figuring out in looking at your code and doing stuff and passing data back and forth. So that could be of interest, I think, because I'm thinking about it for software development. Is like how it's going to change over the next few years.
Yeah, I'll even go a step further and say like MCP is all software written before AI was invented. And then it's that's all the manual software we've written, all of our manual algorithms, all of our human driven stuff that we've created. That's not, maybe it's heuristic based, but mostly it's just give me some data. We figured out an algorithm, run that algorithm, output data, or in the simplest case, fetch from a database or something like that.
Yeah.
That's what the MCP is kind of in my mind. That's the all software written before 2020, 22, whenever this stuff started coming out. This is a weird future we're going to be living in, man. Like I keep thinking, as an app developer, should I be changing how I write my apps? Like, should I be, sorry, side tangent number 3. Like my internal data, if I want to do better than just have my apps have a little chat window that maybe helps me out, what I need to be able to do is take all the data that's in memory in my app and be able to present that to an AI agent, model, agent to agent, doesn't matter. I need a way to represent that. So to make a properly powerful modern app that AIs can work with, it needs to be able to read in data from my app in a format that it can easily comprehend. And then it needs to be able to modify that data in a way that is valid, that my engine can handle.
Yeah.
So for a concrete example, I have a circuit simulator. So I need to be able to give that circuit information, the rough high level circuit information, to an AI so that the user can have high level commands. Because I don't want to, in circuit simulation, you might say, I need a voltage divider. I could, as a programmer, think of 30, 40 different template circuits and create templates and all that. But maybe it would be smarter if I change my internal data structures so that they're easily readable from an AI. Then these AIs do have a great general knowledge. I could say implement a voltage divider given all this data, and then it can output a new data model. I can feed that back into my app. I just feel like that's how modern apps, as app developers, that's how we should be designing our apps so that they take advantage of AI. What I see a lot right now are people just doing kind of a junky version of that, or they're just passing bits and pieces of your app's data through these AIs. Like, I'll pass this little bit, that little bit. I feel like in the future, if we want to actually create more powerful software, if we really want to take advantage of this new technology, it can't be superficial. It has to be deep down. I keep thinking like, I need to figure out better internal representations for my own apps so that I can leverage the power of these AIs, so that I don't have to write 8 million templates and I don't have just a superficial chat that says like, click this button and then right click this and do that. No, just do it. Just do it, agent person, agent AI. And so I think that's kind of the end of my sidechain, but that's what I keep thinking about is how should I be, maybe I don't have to change the architecture of my app, but I do need to implement my app in such a way that I can easily serialize my data into a readable format that an AI can understand. And then I can take that data back and as for its modification, so they can modify it. And then on top of that, because none of these things are specialized, if I'm a serious app developer in the serious future, then each app should be fine tuned. So you should take those big general purpose ones. Once you've decided on that internal representation, then you fine tune it to work with that internal representation more. And I keep thinking that as app developers, if we really want to take advantage of these things, let's stop putting stupid chat windows in every app. And let's think about how to change our internal data structures to really leverage this puppy.
Yeah, I like it. It's a good place to end the podcast, Frank, on a for you to delve on that on your entire flight home from Japan. Which I do. I mean, I think it's super valid. And I think in your case, right, it's like we often aren't thinking when we're creating our data structures or how we're creating our APIs, we are thinking of it as more transactional, like I am a client doing a thing. So even MCP servers are just exposing that, but it's not necessarily evolving the way that these models or things, it's just another client that can communicate to it.
Mhm.
Compared to, like you're saying, you could create a bunch of APIs that are like add a thing, remove a thing, do a thing. But actually, what you really want is something even more verbose than that, where it can understand the entirety of your circuit and reason over it to make complex, fascinating things based off of natural language or
Yeah.
images.
And understand the constraints. Because if I say, give me a voltage divider, the dumbest AI is going to give me two resistors in series. And that is just an easy way to throw away money. You're just wasting electricity as heat to make that voltage divider. A much smarter way is to create a transistor setup. And so it has to know your constraints. You say, power is important to me. Therefore, don't put two stupid resistors in series. That's going to be bad. It has to know the overall objectives that you want and things. And that's where AI really excels. And that's where templates don't excel. You go to Visual Studio, add new view.
Mm,
Like,
yeah.
I'm blind. I don't know anything. That was a bad example, but it doesn't have a view into your code. It doesn't know what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah,
So it can only present the simplest of templates, whereas AI can take in all that context. That's where the power is.
that's true. File, new page, create a page that does this thing. But it can, and you can kind of already do that today with Copilot. Like, here's a thing, but like actually, like
Mhm.
it could be trained specifically on that templating system, like on a Blazor application to like have the latest code and versioning. All right, Frank.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to let you get on a plane, pack up, do all the things. We're going to dive deeper into the worlds of MCPs and A to A's and all these things once Frank is back. But that, my friends, is going to do for this week's Merge Conflict. Let us know. All placed on the internet. We have a Patreon at /Merge Conflict FM. We have a website. We have a YouTube page where you can see our faces and more. So if you're interested in that, check us out over at mergeconflict.fm for all the links. So that's going to do for this week. So until next time, I'm James Montemagno.
And I'm Frank Kruger. Thanks for watching and listening.
Peace.